This conference is to answer any questions that you all may have. An information was filed against Keith Sandy and Dominique Perez this morning, charging them with an open count of murder. We will proceed to preliminary hearing. We don't have the exact timing because we're dependent upon the court. And that preliminary hearing, there's no specific rule that has to do with preliminary hearings. But basically, it'll be, we refer to it as a mini trial, where evidence is heard in court, open court. The defense can cross-examine and present their own testimony, and then a judge will make a decision. Based upon all of the evidence and the testimony, the judge can decide what is most appropriate in this case and file a bind-over order charging them with anything from murder, second-degree, manslaughter, possibly even involuntary manslaughter, I guess aggravated assault, or in fact find that there's not enough evidence for a bind-over order. So that's basically the process. We have talked about this process at length in the past. The problem is, typically before we can go forward, we need to meet a legal standard, and that standard is probable cause. In this case, we do believe we have probable cause, and thus we are going forward on a preliminary hearing via that vehicle. We have done it in past cases, I think most recently in the Adam Casals case and the Gallegos case a number of years ago. So I'll stand for any questions if anyone has any.
Your 4 terms, you haven't pursued charges against any officer involved in a shooting. Why this case?
Because we think that we think that there's evidence that gives us the legal standard probable cause. We've always said that if we can meet that standard, we will go forward. We believe that we can meet that standard, and we are going forward.
What specify what that probable cause is?
Well, I don't want to get into the facts of the case, and I couldn't specify that without getting into the facts of the case. You all will have all of the facts before the preliminary hearing is concluded, and we feel it is our responsibility to bring forth all of the facts. And so I ask you to be patient and wait for that process.
Why are you using the approach of the open murder charge?
Because it gives the court all sorts of options. Typically, when we go in front of a grand jury, we'll present an open charge of murder. I mean, that's just what we refer to it. And that means they've got all of the options to consider. Does that answer your question?
Can you talk a little about the process of this case? Why did it take so long, and what toll did it take on you personally to come to this case?
Actually, it really didn't take very long. We received the reports on or about September 30th. By October 7th, we were in contact with the union attorney discussing this as a way of proceeding. 3 months later, here we are. So that's actually pretty quick. You all have to realize that our days, just like your days, are longer than 8 hours, and we do what we can. We work evenings and weekends, and I think that this actually is reasonably quick.
Keith Sandy's attorney, Sam Bregman, was arguing just a few minutes ago saying that Keith Sandy did everything in his job as a trained APD officer. He did everything by the book to protect a fellow officer in this case. He was adamant, essentially, that there was no reason to bring criminal charges, specifically against his client, Keith Sandy. Obviously, you disagree.
Well, we have a difference of opinion. Both of the defendants have a right to zealous counsel. We would want nothing less for them. I think they both have very capable and able attorneys, and we're moving forward to preliminary hearing.
What makes this case criminal?
Well, what makes this case criminal are some of the facts that will come out at the prelim. I don't want to get into the facts. I don't want to do anything that would jeopardize the integrity of this case. I think that after the prelim is over, you will understand clearly what some of those facts are. I'm really here to talk in generic terms about the process and how we expect the case to move forward.
There are already some people who are saying that you are taking this action now in retaliation to the case that APD has filed against you. How would you respond
Well,
to
they
that?
haven't filed anything, against me. They've simply said that I'm a suspect, and I don't want to get into that. I can say that as of October 7th, probably earlier, but we can pinpoint October 7th, we did have communications with the union attorney telling them that what we were thinking. We hadn't made a final decision, but this is kind of where we thought we would be headed. And so that was way before any of these things came out with my personal problems with the police department, 2 months before.
Does that raise questions for you about the timing of them sending the case to the AG?
Well, you know what? I'm going to let you guys speculate to that. I have been elected to serve as district attorney. I am going to serve as district attorney. I'm going to give the public my best efforts, and I am not going to be intimidated. As long as I have a breath in my body, I will do what I think is right for the people that I represent. And that's all I have to say. I can't be more clear about that. You all can speculate all you want. I think the motivation is pretty transparent.
Kari, why not take this to a regular grand jury? Not only investigative grand juries, but a regular grand jury.
Because a grand jury is a secret proceeding. And I think this case is important. I think officer-involved shooting cases are important across the country, where we want to share all of that information with the public. We want them to see it as it's unfolding. I think that that's critical, to be transparent. And I believe that that will be part of the healing process.
Did the case in St. Louis County, Ferguson, have weighed in on your decision to go this route?
I don't know specifically. I don't, you know.
That was done largely in secret, and there was a lot of backlash that came from it.
Actually,
This is going to be more transparent.
no, actually Ferguson didn't have anything to do, because we had been doing this in previous years, and we had done it on Adam Casals. This was our opinion as to what would be best, given New Mexico, given Bernalillo County, and I think it's so important that we operate transparently. And you all will know everything that we know before this preliminary hearing is
Karen,
concluded.
you're talking about transparency now, but 27, 30 other cases have always gone to a secret grand jury. Why the concern and the advocacy for transparency now when it was not there prior?
We did for 30 years, a procedure had been put in place with an investigative grand jury. And they would hear everything. We were being transparent in terms of presenting everything to that grand jury, and we thought 12 people that were citizens that didn't have a dog in the fight and didn't work with law enforcement would be the best ones to make that decision. That was a process that began in the 80s, I believe under Steve Schiff, and that I carried through. The only exception in my administration is we spent a whole lot more time and presented a lot more evidence. Instead of maybe an hour, 2 or 3 hour hearing, sometimes we had a day-long hearing, sometimes they went over more than that. The court decided that it did not want to proceed on that basis, and then we developed our own process. I believe it's the only kind in the country as far as I know, and you can go to our website and look at all of our officer-involved shooting reports, where we do a report. In addition, we attach the OMI, criminalistics, any kind of forensics, officer statements. So that's in an attempt to be transparent. So Dennis, I would say we have really struggled to be as transparent as we possibly can. The preliminary hearings, like I said, have been going on. And again, that's in an attempt to be transparent. So that's been consistent. It's not something that we just thought of yesterday.
Karen, all of this,
Karen, since you filed these charges this morning, do they have to report to jail people pending the?
Not at this point in time. It's a mere charge at this point in time. Now, if a judge finds that there's evidence to bind them over, then that will be the formal charge, and that will start the process of arraignment and those kinds of
So
things.
they don't have to report in at this point?
It's my understanding that they do not.
If they're not bound over, does that result in dismissal of charges?
Yes, if they're not bound over, then the court would find that there's not enough evidence and dismiss the charges. But unlike Ferguson and unlike in New York City, you know, some recent high-profile cases, we're going to know. The public's going to have that information. You all are going to have seen the witnesses, heard the argument, and you'll understand, hopefully, perhaps why the judge made the decision that he or she made.
Have you agreed with the defense counsel who the judge will be?
No, we have not.
Has your office done any additional investigation on this case, or is the case you're going to be presenting at the preliminary hearing APD's investigation that was handed over to you?
At this point in time, what we plan on presenting is APD's case that was handed over to us. We've only had the reports for about 3 months, which really isn't isn't that long. There are extensive reports. But if we need further investigation, I mean, then we'll decide on how to accomplish that when that need becomes known to us.
Here, all of our organizations have done stories about DAs not filing charges on officers. You're one of the first in the nation to do so. Now you're obviously a national figure. What is your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction to that is I have been elected as district attorney and I have a job to do and I'm doing it. I would be, I need to point out that I'm doing it with incredible people. I trust their integrity, they have skills, they have experience, and any kind of decision we make like this that's that important, we do in a group after a lot of discussion, after a lot of thinking and deliberation.
Is this one of the first times that a lapel camera has actually been used against an officer for charges?
You know, I don't have the answer to that. I do know that we've had lapel cameras in other officer-involved shootings, and I think almost in every case that we've had one that had any information on it, we would attach them in our report. Isn't that true, Kayla?
Does this play an integral part in your decision to go forward?
Sure, the more information we have, I think the better it is for everyone.
Do you look at taking, in the unfortunate event that there are future police shootings, will you look at taking those to
Well, we need to establish probable cause. And you know, that probable cause, I know it might seem like a convenient thing for DAs to say we have to have probable cause. That probable cause standard protects all of the citizens in our country from a DA who's overzealous or who may be acting with bad intentions. And so we really have to adhere to that. But if we have probable cause, of course we'll go forward. And of course, I can't think of a time that we wouldn't proceed by preliminary hearing because once again, it offers the greatest level of transparency.
So you're saying in all those other cases, they never reached the level of probable cause?
We didn't believe that, yes, under the law. Now something else to point out, and if you go to our website, we have a 2 or 3 page legal analysis that we include in all of our reports. And the Supreme Court of the United States, as well as the Supreme Court of New Mexico, you know, law enforcement officers, because they do the job that they do, because they have to, who knows what their day is going to entail when they put on their uniform, they're given greater discretion in the exercise of deadly force than you or I would be. And so that law is what we're bound by, and certainly it's available to the public and to you all in all of our officer-involved shooting reports.
Did you struggle to come to this decision?
Did I struggle? Did I struggle? Yes. Yes, we struggle, and I hope we struggle. My God, if we didn't struggle, then I would think we're not doing our job. But we struggle when we come to any decision that's going to impact lives and impact our community. It's a struggle. We want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. We want to make sure we're doing it for the right reason. We want to make sure that it's not politics, it's not public opinion, it's not, and we want to make sure, I think that I'm surrounded by people that are as concerned as I am about going home and being able to look at myself in the mirror and think that it was a good day and that we made the right decision.
Kari, who's going to present the case actually in court? Which one of your attorneys, or you personally?
Debbie DiPaolo will be presenting it, and Chris Latman. Debbie DiPaolo is a Chief Deputy District Attorney, and Chris Latman, I believe, is the Deputy District Attorney? Yes. Both have, gosh, how many years of experience? You guys want me to tell you? Many, many, many years of experience.
Do you feel that there's more exposure for either Sandy or Pettis, more evidence of a crime against either one of those officers?
And once again, that would be me commenting on the evidence. I don't need to do that. That would jeopardize the integrity of the case. I think that the judge will have to hear all the evidence, and that would be up to the judge.
Are there other cases where you're considering whether or not to go to a preliminary hearing? And I'm just trying to...
It would be premature at this point. We have a lot of outstanding cases that we haven't received reports on.
Well, there were 12 cases outlined in the Department of Justice cases, examples of excessive force or unconstitutional use of deadly force by police officers, by APD. Have all of those cases been cleared?
I don't know specifically which 12. Some, as I recall, and I'm relying on my memory, some were already presented to an investigative grand jury, or investigatory grand jury. We use different. And so and some had already been dealt with by a officer-involved shooting report.
Could you just break down the projected timeline moving forward with this?
We don't have control because it depends on the court and the scheduling. We anticipate this will take 2 to 3 weeks. Maybe defense counsel will anticipate longer, and so we need the judge to be able to make themselves available for that period of time. My goal is to have it move forward as quickly as possible.
Could I just go back and ask, I mean, why is this case different than, say, the Ellis shooting or the Torres shooting?
Pretty
high profile.
Right.
Where the families have been out in front of your office protesting and stuff. So,
Right.
I mean, I think I want to ask for them specifically, why is,
And all I can say is we have evidence in this case that it helps us establish probable cause. We didn't feel that we had in the other cases, and I'm not going to comment on the evidence.
If this case goes to trial, do you think you can win convictions against these police officers?
I have to honestly say our job is to do justice, and I think our job is to do the best that we can in presenting the evidence, presenting all of the evidence, all the important evidence, and then the court will make a decision. And that's truly, for a prosecutor, that's truly the attitude that we should take in every case. We do the best we can do, and then we hope that justice is done, or some measure of justice.
You have a close working relationship with APD and have for a long time. Will this case jeopardize any, I guess, personal relationship you have with the department going forward?
All I can say is I hope that we can be professional and respect each other's responsibility to do the right thing and give each other, the space that we all need to do the right thing.
Have you spoken to the chief or the mayor since you made this decision?
No, I have not.
Can you talk a
We
little
did, if I could, we did send the chief a email with a copy, first thing this morning before any press release went out, with a copy of the information so that he would be aware. Just like we would do in an officer-involved shooting report, we send them a letter letting them know and then telling them that they can access that report on the website. So we did do that this morning before anything went out to the media.
Can you explain a little bit more why we didn't arrest or book these officers?
Well, because typically that's not how you proceed in preliminary hearing. Typically, because they haven't been bound over on anything yet. And there was no criminal complaint filed. And so once a judge binds them over, then that will initiate that process.
Why didn't you file a criminal complaint?
Well, we just decided that an information was the best
What's the difference?
way of doing that. A criminal complaint alleges a crime, and information is just something you file. There's really not a huge difference. It's just something that the district attorney's office is able to do on their own. And so we just decided it would be quicker to go ahead and prepare this and file it on our own. It's signed by one of the attorneys that will be pursuing the case, Debbie DePaula.
Did not go in that route give the impression to try to help ease into this, so you're not bringing the cops into the jail?
Absolutely not. I mean, absolutely not.
does the information not start the time factors that a criminal complaint would start?
I would think,
Do you have to set
Debbie,
it 2 hours?
wouldn't it, regarding preliminary hearings, there's not a specific rule that gives us all this information.
Normally, they need to be heard within 60 days of filing. However, it is our
Right.
understanding, having spoken with their defense attorneys, that in order to proceed with this in a manner that is going to be appropriate for all parties, they will waive the time
Okay.
limits on that so that we can get a setting that is adequate in length of time and in preparation for the defense in this case.
And also, I need to correct something. We did not send a copy of the information to the chiefs, but we did tell him about it and what the charges were.
Did he respond?
Yes.
Just a timeline again, so in October, just go through that again.
I believe on or about September 30th, we received all of the reports. And that starts our time. Basically, in our protocol, it is our goal, and we have not always been successful, that within 6 months from receiving all the reports, we get out our own officer-involved shooting report, or we take some kind of action. We've done that on a lot of cases. I think we're behind on a few officer-involved shooting reports just because we've had so much going on. But, so here we were able to respond within 3 months after receiving the reports. Within a week of the time that we got the final reports, and we were privy to certain information prior to that, but within a week, and this is kind of a guesstimate, but I believe that it's very accurate, we were in contact with Fred Maurer, the union attorney for APD, and discussing possibilities and different options and kind of what we were planning.
Were you discussing the preliminary hearing at that time?
Yes, that had been brought up.
What agency submitted their reports?
The Albuquerque Police Department.
So they did their own investigation on this?
Yes. What we have is an officer-involved shooting kind of MOU where we have a number of agencies that work together in concert, but the agency that has the shooting officer is the one that has a primary responsibility for the investigation.
Nobody else investigated?
Well, they investigate it with New Mexico State Police and BCSO. So it's a concerted effort.
Hey, Kari, the Wall Street Journal had a story this morning in a larger picture. Across the nation, there are bills being introduced in various states to take police shootings out of the local district attorneys and give them to a special prosecutor, maybe the AG's office. There's going to be one introduced here. Do you support, can you give us your thoughts on that type of procedure? Should these things be out of the hands of the local DA?
I can think of pros and cons. Personally, I would love to be out of the business of officer-involved shootings. The reality is, I represent individuals in the community, and they want local law enforcement to deal with issues that are local. And I believe in that as well. When I say I'd love to be out of the business, I would like to have dinner with my family on Sunday evenings like I used to. I would like to have Saturday mornings where I didn't have to get up at 4:30 and start the day. So I'm saying that somewhat loosely. So I have mixed feelings, but if we introduce a bill, or if a bill is introduced, giving it to the AG's office or something like that, I would be more than supportive of that bill. One of the things I tried to do when the grand jury process was suspended, when we couldn't present it to an investigatory grand jury, I tried to get an interest with the AG's office and with other DAs throughout the state to see if we could have some kind of statewide process or statewide panel that would review these cases and determine whether or not there was probable cause. And there just wasn't any interest at that point in time because this seems to be more of a Bernalillo County issue, and they didn't want to expend their time and their efforts when they could be better spent dealing with their own personal issues that they were contending with in their districts.
Did you feel additional pressure to file charges because of the Department of Justice settlement?
No. None at all. And we've met with the Department of Justice on numerous occasions, and I wasn't the only one in those meetings, but I don't think they exerted any pressure at all on us to do anything different from what we were doing.
Have you heard from the feds today?
No, I have not. I have not.
How about the national climate? Did that influence your decision to press charges?
No. It's just real easy when you try to do the right thing for the right reason. It's just real easy. And if you start taking into account all of the different things going on and the moods and which way the wind is blowing, chances are I think you're going to make the wrong decision. I think you need to be grounded, you need to be deliberate, you need to be well informed, and you need to do the best that you can do given what you have. And like I said, I am always surrounded by people that I have full faith, not only in their ability and their expertise, but in their integrity.
Kari, according to FailEncounters.org, the Albuquerque police have killed 46 people since you've become district attorney. Do you still think that all of those other shootings are justified? And this is the first one with probable cause. And if the answer is yes, would that include Andy Lopez, who was killed by Justin Montgomery while wounded, unarmed, and laying on the ground?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that case. Is that an old case or?
It's from 2009. It was in the DOJ report. He was wounded, laying on the ground, unarmed.
I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't know the facts. I can say that in our cases that we've done officer-involved shooting reports, we do not believe that there's been probable cause to go forward.
Other than this one?
Pardon?
In none of those 46?
We did not weigh in on the 46. I can only talk about the cases that we weighed in on the officer-involved shooting reports that we've done. Prior to that, we would present the evidence to an investigatory grand jury, and they would hear all of the evidence, and they would have options to ask to hear more evidence, that they thought that it should be presented, criminal charges should be pursued, or that no criminal charges should be pursued. And so that was a decision that they made based upon all the evidence that they heard.
Since you now think that the preliminary hearing provides more transparency, will you return to some of those fatal shootings and present them
Well,
in the preliminary hearing to a judge?
Professor, you need to understand we need to meet that legal standard of probable cause. And it was a consensus that we did not have probable cause in those cases. And again, go back to the fact that the law gives a police officer broader discretion in using deadly force than you or I have in defending ourselves. And so we won't go back to cases that grand juries have already decided that there's not probable cause, or that we don't believe that there's probable cause. We take these issues extremely seriously. We struggle with every one of them, and we don't struggle with them overnight. We struggle with them for weeks or with months. And we have a number of people coming back to the table and asking questions and going back out and coming back to the table and asking questions. So it's an evolving process. It's not something that we just instantly make a decision on and don't look back. And we do look back on those cases too. And we do second guess ourselves. And I think that's part of what we need to be doing to try to make the right decision. Yes.
Maria Bautista, with due respect, I see how James Boyd was shot this afternoon at the Department of Justice findings, and it was moved directly into the criminal division of the United States Department of Justice. And I'm wondering, they also found not enough evidence to indict, but what was the difference in their investigation and yours that you did find some way to move forward on this?
I think and I'm not well versed in the criminal civil rights area, okay? That's federal. That's totally different than what we do. We're going under state law. They have federal criminal civil rights violations, and I've done some reading on that, and it is not always clear to me. But I can say that there's different standards and there are different measures. We're going under state law, and we feel that we have probable cause under New Mexico state law.
Right, and so this, that situation was expedited.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious now as to some of the cases that haven't been heard yet, and whether or not any of those might be coming up. You said you have two that you're still working on. Is it possible for you to tell us who those two are?
We have a number, actually I don't even know the names. We have a number of cases that we're working on. We have a number of cases that have happened that we don't even have reports on. So that's, I don't know all of the names. I have a chart that we're trying to keep updated, but I don't have that. So I don't know. But you can go to our website to see our past reports. And our goal, our protocol, and unfortunately we haven't been successful, is by the time that we get the reports, we log them into, we call our case management system. And within 6 months, we have out an officer-involved shooting report. I should say that these cases are in addition to our regular daily responsibilities. And so these are our night jobs and our weekend jobs, and we can't always proceed as quickly as we would want. And I agree that time is important, that we proceed as quickly as possible.
Kari, when you had talked about this case back in November, you talked about the discretion officers have with deadly force.
Right.
You had said you wanted to be very careful in doing that. In weighing the options, in this case, in pursuing charges, did that concern you that officers on the streets may be afraid or hesitant to fire their weapons?
Yes. That's part of the reality of what we do. And yeah, that's a consideration, but it doesn't negate our responsibility to look at the case and look at the law and make a decision based upon that.
Given your historically close relationship with APD, was there ever any question of referring the case to an independent prosecutor?
I wish. Our budgets are very tight. And I think that the last calculation, we had about 69% of what we need to do the work that we're doing. That varies. That was a number of years ago, maybe around 2008, 2007. We don't have money to hire independent prosecutors. It would take hundreds of thousands of dollars to hire special prosecutors, is what we call them. We would have to lay off 20% of the people that work in the office to accomplish that, and we just can't possibly accomplish that. So we're in the same position as most state agencies and most district attorneys throughout the country, is getting the biggest bang with the dollars that we do have to work with. So that really isn't a viable option.
But rather than a special prosecutor, what about a prosecutor one of your colleagues from a different jurisdiction?
Well, and I would imagine that that would be very difficult because they're as stretched as we are, and they are not going to have the hundreds, if not thousands, of hours to devote to a case like this.
You had mentioned earlier about an effort to try and get other jurisdictions involved in these and try to create some sort of process that might take it out of their hand. When was that?
That was probably in, is it 2010? When did that, no, 2012. Probably in the summer of 2012. Also, I'll mention something that I think was really great. Cisco McSorley introduced a bill, I believe it was the last session, saying that kind of allowing us the vehicle of a preliminary hearing without having to file an information or a criminal complaint, meaning we wouldn't need to meet that standard of probable cause to have a preliminary hearing. And I worked with him, and I know that some other individuals worked with him, because that would be great. Every officer involved shooting, we don't have to establish probable cause. It just goes to prelim, so everybody knows what happened, why it happened, the officer's viewpoint, and everybody gets their day in court. That didn't go anywhere. I am hoping that that continues in the future. I mean, that would be a great thing. And officers can also, you don't get to hear much from officers. You don't get to hear how dangerous it is if someone has a knife, or some of their training, and I think it would be a good vehicle for everyone. What we're after is justice. That's what we're supposed to be after as prosecutors. And Cisco McSorley would be a good source if you want to talk to him about that, because I think that would be a very important bill.
Kari, the DOJ report described the internal affairs investigations of APD as deficient. If that's the case, and those are the investigations that you've been relying on to determine probable cause, wouldn't that warrant returning to some of those failed shootings to determine if the probable cause exists?
Are you saying the IA investigations?
The DOJ
Oh,
investigation described internal affairs.
Well, we don't have anything to do with internal affairs. And all of that is confidential. So their reports don't come out of internal affairs to us. It's just a regular investigation that's handed over. We don't have anything. We don't know anything in internal affairs. We aren't privy. And I don't think we can even access those records. So definitely when we went to the system where we did our reports, we pointed out numerous times, and those letters are on our website, number one, we're dependent on the investigative agency for everything. We don't have the power to subpoena people. They don't want to talk to us. They don't have to, whereas the grand jury did, the investigative grand jury did. We don't have the opportunity to take statements under oath. If they want to lie, they can lie without any repercussions. At the grand jury, they were sworn and given, had to give their statements under oath. So, I mean, there's a lot of disadvantages that we have as prosecutors that are relying on just the report. We don't control that. There's nothing we can do. There's no law that gives us more power, and we're doing the best we can with what we have. I've been contacted by people from across the country that have looked at our website and said, I've never seen this in any other office in the country. You guys do a great job, and you attach everything. And they were complimentary about that process. We try to be as transparent as we can, and we do the report, and we give you everything you need to disagree with us if you don't like what we put in the report. So we're trying not to, not to hide anything. Because the more transparent the process is, the better off we all are, and the better understanding everyone has. Okay? And thank you all very much.